Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. This is our Facebook Live interview for Monday, April 27th, as we continue communicating on the COVID virus outbreak here in Westchester County and, of course, on a broader basis. Our guest this morning is New York State Assemblyman David Buchwald. And David, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today.
Of course, thank you, George. Pleasure to be on with you, and pleasure to be conveying to Westchester residents everything that we're collectively doing to help them in this very difficult time.
Well, David, you've taken a position of leadership in trying to help us from the state level down to the county level to accommodate Westchester County taxpayers. We've made the argument, both you and I and others, that the property taxpayers do face a hardship, and now they have a benefit of a two-tiered program that involves extending the grace period to make payments until July 15th without penalty if they assert economic impact. And then if they can't assert economic impact, they can still benefit from a lower late fee. But you've been out there very early in this program, showing real leadership on it. Do you want to talk a little bit about your involvement on this issue dating back to when the legislature was in session?
Sure, and I appreciate it. Obviously, this is a issue that I've paid significant attention to as someone who, prior to being in the state assembly, was a practicing tax attorney. I am very cognizant of the fact that what we have to do as elected officials is really do everything in our power to help people in this difficult time. And some of that, of course, is on the healthcare and safety front, but some of it is on the financial front. And right now, one of the things that government does, in addition to getting out needed assistance like unemployment insurance and so forth, is making sure that we're not creating more of a burden for area taxpayers than we need to. And that's part of why the federal government and the IRS and the state government delayed income tax payments till July 15th. But we still have this issue for many Westchester residents and small businesses that their property taxes were coming due here in April. Westchester County, as you know, George, was basically the only county in New York State to have an April payment date due for county taxes. So I rolled up my sleeves, proud to work with you and with others to make sure that there was going to be attention paid to, particularly for those facing financial hardship, the ability to delay this. And so I pointed out that there was some existing authority under state law to make the delays, but also really pleased to be your partner in making sure that any other opportunities we had, either through the county itself or through working with the governor's office, to make sure that we could get to this point today where it is not property tax payments that are the ones that are causing people to have sleepless nights right now.
Well, and part of this, could be dealt with at the level of the Board of Legislators, and they had some conversations with some of the town supervisors, but some of it required state action. We're very appreciative that Governor Cuomo issued an executive order that allowed us to put a critical piece in place. But we also know the governor doesn't act in a vacuum. And, you're 7 years in the state assembly, your colleagues in the assembly and the Senate. I was honored to be a colleague for a portion of that time in the state legislature. That your opinions and your involvement really does mean a great deal. So we really thank you for your leadership and your critical role in making this happen. Now, we've got social distancing in effect, and we have the assembly, I guess, is out of session at the moment. How are you functioning between your district office and the legislative body in this, clearly different and strange period of time?
Sure. Well, look, physically, our offices in Mount Kisco and in Albany are not open, but practically speaking, they are working as hard as ever. I and my able staff are all working remotely. If you call the office, someone picks up because the phones are being forwarded. If you email us, you get a response. And we are putting together information through e-newsletters and otherwise. And yes, the Albany portion of things, especially now that we've passed the state budget, have slowed down, but we're still communicating with colleagues around the state, trying to both share information about potential legislative proposals. Very pleased to have put forward a number of items, including with State Senator Peter Harcum, who shares part of my assembly district, things that become law, not because the legislature has passed them, but because Governor Cuomo has issued executive orders to help implement them. And I am pleased that before we adjourned, we already expanded paid sick leaves, first for area residents battling COVID-19, but then effective January 1st for all New Yorkers. And thanks to you and the county board, we already had that on a Westchester level, but we are trying to make sure we step up as your partners at the state level do right by New Yorkers, keep them safe.
I know you've had, some pretty good successes over the years on a variety of legislative issues. In this particular one that we faced with property taxes and COVID, that's just the most recent one. I remark that your leadership a couple of years ago helped us get something that most people thought would be automatic, but was not so easy to get through the legislature. Ultimately, it took a constitutional amendment to have pension forfeiture when a public official commits a job-related felony. Normally, they would lose their position when they commit a job-related felony, but still be eligible for their pension, which clearly offends many people. As a matter of practical reality, if you forfeit your job because of your behavior on the job, you basically forfeited the trust of the people that put you there, and the long-term benefit, pension benefit, is part of that. That was not an easy battle for you, and I know you've done advocacy with the MTA to get money to fix the White Plains train station, so many other things. Does that portion of your job stop, or is that just advocacy that just continues on whether offices are open or closed?
Look, it is, first of all, always the case that the majority of work as a state legislator, and you know this, George, is in the district and interacting with constituents and fellow representatives in government and otherwise. But even when Albany itself isn't meeting, and that's true, there's a portion of the year where we're not usually typically in session, usually in the latter half of the year. It is still the case that we are moving forward on a whole host of fronts, and whether that's talking with state agencies and I had a conversation with the Deputy Commissioner of Health yesterday. That's exactly what my constituents expect me to be doing. And you're absolutely right. We need to make sure we keep making progress on both things COVID-19 related and that just generally New Yorkers and Westchester residents need. And it is important for them to know that we as elected officials are working as hard as possible, even if it's not work in the same way of working collectively. And this, your time in first the city government in Rye, and then the county legislature and the state legislature, it's not the physical amount of time you're in meetings as a legislature that is the determination of how hard you're working. It is, what are you doing with the time outside? And I've always been someone who really believes that I'm there to make efforts. And right now, those efforts have to be all the more effective because there are hospital workers who need to make sure that they have masks and personal protective equipment. There are family members who are separated from their loved ones at nursing homes, and it's my job to try to make sure that there's a connection. There are folks out of work and who need that unemployment check in order to make their next bill payment. And if I can be their liaison and their voice, that's something that I and my small but able staff are really proud to be playing a role right now in helping people.
Now, there's a big decision, I guess Governor Cuomo is either has made or will be making relative to the upcoming June primary ballot, which includes both the presidential primary, even though the competition on the Democratic side has officially, ended in certain ways, but there's still a primary to be had in that was postponed from April. And then, of course, we have primaries for other positions. We're obviously in a governmental conversation here. But without being too specific, primaries for Congress, for the Assembly, for district attorney, and so forth. What's your point of view on how we should handle that election vis-a-vis mail absentee ballots, coming to the voting booth? How do you view that issue coming up?
Well, Governor Cuomo just took a very important step on Friday, issuing an executive order to make sure that not only will every eligible voter here in New York be able to vote by absentee ballot, but that every one of those voters will be sent an absentee ballot application in the mail by the Board of Elections and provided a postage paid envelope to get back in that application. And so I think it's important that every voter make sure they turn that in so they have a chance to participate in our democracy. We are going to make sure that everyone can stay safe by voting from home. There still will be opportunities to vote on primary day, June 23rd, and presumably through early voting as well. And some people will take advantage of that. But right now, we cannot say for sure what the situation will be health-wise in June. So making sure to get in those absentee ballot applications and then ballots start being sent out and turn them in, I think is crucial for our democracy to function. We do not want a situation like they had, say, in Wisconsin a few weeks ago, where people had to line up for hours and hours on end. Yes, 6 feet apart, but still, there shouldn't be that sort of price for participating in our democracy. I'm glad that Governor Cuomo is making sure that things are moving forward in a much more productive, health-conscious way here in New York.
Looking longer term, would you advocate for mail balloting as an alternative, not specifically tied to a particular reason, but as an option that a voter can take if it's more convenient for them in order to vote?
Yeah. Yes, George. In fact, I'm a co-sponsor of a proposed state constitutional amendment to remove the requirement to have an excuse in order to cast an absentee ballot. Right now, under our state constitution, only under limited circumstances can you get an absentee ballot. And thankfully, Governor Cuomo has recognized that right now everyone has an excuse because of the nature of this health emergency. But longer term, we should say if you want to vote by absentee ballot, you should be able to. We've already passed that legislation once through the state legislature, but as you know, a constitutional amendment needs to pass through 2 successive iterations of the state legislature, and then the amendment goes to the voters of New York in order to get it passed. So the earliest that rule could go into place would be effectively 2022. So the right long-term policy didn't solve the issue this time, but it's part of why I'm particularly proud of having actually passed that constitutional amendment on pension forfeiture. When I proposed it in 2013, folks said it wouldn't get done, and yet by 2017, it was the law of the land, having finally passed through the Assembly and the Senate twice, and then overwhelmingly supported by New Yorkers. It is not an easy process, and it shouldn't be to amend our Constitution, but certainly when it comes to expanding the ability of people to vote and to have government held to account, these are things we should be doing.
It does tell us, and particularly for the regular person, just how hard it is to accomplish things. People, will draw an opinion and they'll, snap the figures and say, you should do this. But the task from the idea to the actual implementation in a democracy where there's debate, disagreement, people of reasonable intent can disagree on whether something should or shouldn't be done or how it's implemented. It does take a while. And I guess sometimes people necessarily don't appreciate that if it's not what they have to deal with every day. Let's just close on a personal note. You have 2 lovely young daughters, and your wife, who's also a lawyer of great ability and skill, and yourself. How are you handling the at-home version of sheltering in place and trying to maintain a normal family life? I'm sure, like any kids, they're going stir crazy, and perhaps you and Lara are too.
Well, I'll say it is more of a blessing than a burden for sure to be confined effectively to quarters, often with a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. They have, I will say, handled this with great perseverance. On some level, we're so thankful that they're at the age where, of course, they recognize that this is new and different, but they don't have a sense of totally how different it is from what we're used to. Our older daughter will be starting kindergarten in the fall. So they're both at preschool age and trying to do classes remotely a little bit, but we don't have quite the same burden that, say, a parent would have of a school age child, where you have to be worried about how much they are potentially losing in terms of educational opportunity and so forth. One of the reasons I'm very focused on working with our area educators in making sure that as much as possible, we have a well-functioning school system, education system. That's one of the things, of course, that makes the Lower Hudson Valley great. But on a more personal note, we try to just find ways to get out and about. And obviously, we're blessed to have a backyard where we can do that. We can walk around our neighborhood. over the weekend, I think it was on Saturday, was a much sunnier day than the washout day of Sunday. We went out to Cranberry Lake, which is one of the Westchester County parks. It turned out that your county police were being effective in limiting the number of people who were coming in. So we took a break. We did pickup of a frozen yogurt shop here in White Plains and patronized them, making sure they're doing well. But obviously that's good for family relations as well. And thankfully, the girls so far are doing great. And Lara, my wife, is working hard, but remotely, and thankfully tremendously supportive of the fact that every once in a while I need the house to be a little quiet and calm so I can do great conversations like this with you, George. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, David, it's a pleasure to talk with you. We wish you, Lara, and the girls the best. We appreciate your leadership on this Westchester taxation issue, and we'll have a chance to see each other hopefully when this is all over, after I can get a haircut and get rid of my 1970s hair here that I'm working on, which I don't think I've had this much hair in 40
Well,
years.
as someone who goes to traditionally goes to my barber shop that I've been going to since I was a 3-year-old, I very much would like the opportunity just to see my barber again, just because he's a great person, and really appreciate the fact that there are a lot of folks who are out there struggling, but they know that you're working very hard on their behalf, George, and wish you all the best, and to everyone in county government for the work you're doing. Happy to be your partner.
Thank you, David. We've been talking with Assemblyman David Buchwald here on our Facebook Live program every day at 11 o'clock. Myself or Ken Jenkins, the Deputy County Executive, will be interviewing somebody in our community, in public office and private endeavor that is somehow involved in our efforts. Later today at 2 o'clock, we will have a press conference that will include members of the Board of Legislators, where we'll roll out what we just alluded to, David's role in our 2-tier plan to help property taxpayers a little bit deal with the impact of the COVID virus's economic aftermath. And if we have any reality here, it's that we face 2 major problems at the same time. We face a major public health problem, and in sequence, that's the one we have to deal with right now. But close on its heels is a major economic problem. And how we as a government deal with that is probably the longer term question alongside the health question. But both of them are there together. Those of us in public office have a responsibility, and that's what we're going to try to fulfill. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thanks for watching. Maybe we'll see you again at 2 o'clock. Have a great day.